6. Second sight and telepathy. We've already hinted that events of an ordinary kind, illusions, cases of mistaken identity, or hallucinations, are probably groundwork for part of the Highland belief in second sight. Of course, if a certain portion of the hallucinations were, or could be taken for veridical, attention would be given to these alone, and others would be neglected. And the Psychical Society has collected and examined hundreds of these cases in modern life. The Society may find out, experimentally, whether second sight can be acquired by this manner described by Mr. Kirk, whether by the hair tether or merely putting a foot under that of the seer. Thus, contact is used from thought reading, as in second sight, the seer by contact communicates his hallucination. Second sight itself is now called telepathy, which, however, does not essentially advance our knowledge on the subject. It is either very common, or people who choose to claim possession of it are very common. In our society, it is mere matter for idle tales. In the Highlands, the second sight was a belief and a system. Mr. Pepys and Dr. Johnson investigated the matter, and Dr. Johnson came away open to conviction, but unconvinced. The Psychical Society is now examining second sight in the Highlands. It is interesting to learn that a Presbyterian seers justified their visions out of the Bible, which also justified the burning of these gifted men on occasion. Mr. Kirk is tolerant enough to ascribe the visions as a bounty of providence. This may be passed north of the Highland pine, but in Fife and the south, the seers will be speedily have been accommodated with a stake and tar barrel. The writings of Woodrow and Mr. Robert Blair of St. Andrews, 1650-1660, prove that the savory preacher wrought miracles. He was inspired, but if an amateur did the very same things, prophesied, heals disease, and so forth, he or she was likely to be healed by the presbytery and possibly dragged to the stake. In the Highlands, these invidious distinctions were less forcibly drawn. Mr. Kirk treats the whole question as curiosity, cold, scientific ways. If these things occur, they are in the realm of nature, and are results of cases which may be verily conjectured. They may be provincial, or sport of evolution derived from a complexional quality of the first acquirer, which often becomes hereditary in its lineage. Lord Tarbot's letter to the inquirer, Robert Boyle, was added by Mr. Kirk to this little treatise, with his own annotations. The belief that the various sights could only be seen while the eyes were kept steady without twinkling is attested to the well-known anecdote. On the afternoon of Culloden, a little girl staying with Lord Lovat of Gortleg was reading in a window seat. Chancing to look out, she saw the company of headlong riders hastening to the castle. Believing them to be the Slaymyth, she tried hard to keep her eyes from twinkling, that she might not lose the vision. But these, alas, were no fairies. They were Prince Charles and his men flying from the victorious English. The tale proves that the belief long survived in the day of the Minister of Aberfoyle. Lord Tarbot mentions also the vision in the shroud on the breast of a man about to die, which seems to be alluded to in the prophecy of Thecmocleus in the Odyssey. Lord Tarbot's tales are in the familiar kind. There are dozens of such smothly in some place. Mr. Kirk's notes are chiefly remarkable on a citation of Walter Graham's Evil Eye, which killed what he praised, a worldwide superstition too common to need supporting by foreign and classical examples. Unluckily, at this point, Mr. Kirk abandons what we may call his scientific attitude. He has accounted for his supernatural affairs as not supernatural at all, but phenomena in nature, and subject, like other phenomena, to laws. But now it occurs to him to explain the conduct of the Slaymyth as the result of missionary zeal on their part. They endeavor to convince us of a deity. Though on the face of his arguments, the co-walker no more proves a deity than does ordinary walker. He may have been reading learned Dr. Moore the Platonist, and may have altered his ideas. His account of the girl who learned, or rather composed, a long poem by aid of nimble and courteous sprites, afforded an early example of what is called an inspirational medium. It is unlucky that Mr. Kirk did not publish this work, of which he had a copy, The ordinary spirit poetry may be written, as Dr. Johnson said of a sitting, by anyone who would abandon his mind to it. Mr. Kirk maintains that the Neolithic arrowheads could not have been executed by the art of men. He relapses from his usual old common sense. He also believes in men who are magically shot-proof, like Claverhouse, who had to be shot by a silver bullet, like Archbishop Sharp, who thought his pious assassins erroneously held at their bullets to no effect, and like certain soldiers mentioned in Double Fidelity of Dumruth Racket. This absurd belief was very generally held by the Covenanters, where his local superstitions and those of his generation are not concerned. Mr. Kirk recovers his clearness of intellect. In Purgatory, he only finds a pre-Christian Hades, or a secret republic with an ecclesiastical coloring, additional fictions of monks doting in their crazy heads. Mr. Kirk did not perceive the danger in his own argument. If the Highland second-sighted man answers to a Hebrew prophet in his visions and trances, the Hebrew prophet is in danger of being no more considered than a Highland second-sighted man. However, it is to Mr. Kirk's praise that he shows no persecuting disposition as far as witches are concerned, though he has seen them pricked, and that he argues very fairly that his premises and within his limits. He recognizes the unity of the spiritual phenomena and the popular beliefs, whether it springs from a common wellhead of delusion in their nature, or whether it really has a source in the observation of peculiar and rather rare phenomena. The Edinburgh edition of 1815, probably the only one, the editor added the work of Telepathy and Solinus and Second Sight. This is not rare nor expensive, and we do not reproduce it. One case of telepathy may be quoted from the Theophilus. Donald Beaton, resident of Hammer, related that, in his passage from Glasgow to the Isle of Skye, he stopped at Tipperary, a known harbour in the Isle of Mull. Here someone gave him a loin of venison. Donald, of whose wife and mother was a seer, to try her powers, wished at the piece of venison in her hands. The same night the seer, who lived with her daughter and his wife, apprehended that she saw him enter the house with a shapeless lump in his hands. She knew not what, but resembled flesh, which gave herself and her daughter great joy, as they despaired of him by his long absence. This is telepathy, if telepathy there be. Another picturesque tale shows us how, on the night before the rout of Moy, Patrick McCaskill met the famed Rhiannon, MacLeod's piper in the town of Inverness, and saw him contracted to a sizable boy of 5 or 6, and expand again to his athletic proportions. And Rhiannon was killed at the rout of Moy in attempts to surprise and seize Prince Charles. Before leaving Skye, he had prophesied, MacLeod will come back, but Rhiannon shall never. The editor is acquainted with the splendid case of Second Sight in Kensington. The seer was an accomplished English gentleman, and mentioned his vision at the moment to a witness who remembers and corroborates his statement. Thus, the Hebrides and the Highlands have no monopoly on Second Sight. The researches M. Charcot, M. Richet, and other psychologists do not at present help us much in the matter of vertical Second Sight. It is not a hallucination suggested by a hypnotized subject, but an impression produced by a remote person or event on the subject who has not been hypnotized at all. For example, Dr. Adam Clark, in his Life, Volume 2, page 16, tells us of Tracy Clark, who, being in the Isle of Man with his son, dreamed that he had visited his wife in Liverpool. He told his son that Mrs. Clark was looking very well, but, contrary to her habit, was sleeping in the best bedroom. On the day when Mr. Clark said this, Mrs. Clark, who had been sleeping in her best bedroom, told the little son to lay in her room, that she had heard his father ride up to the door, stable his horse, open the door, and come upstairs, and walk around her bed, but that she could not see him. This is a case at least of second hearing, as it has no hypnotic explanation. We end in the candid spirit of Dr. Johnson as far as the poltergeist and second sight are concerned, willing to be convinced, but far indeed from conviction. As to the fairy belief, we conceive it to be a complex matter, from which tradition, with its memory of earth-dwellers, is not wholly absent, while more is due to survival in the pre-Christian Hades, and to the beliefs of the local spirits, the Voyas de Melanesia, the netherlands of ancient and modern Greece, the lairs of Rome, and the fateful marrow of Hathors, old imaginings of a world not yet depeopled of its dreams.